This podcast is a production of WCWP, LIU Public Radio. Check out our lineup of original programs, listen live, or support by visiting WCWP.org.
The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead. We provide programs and services designed to assist and support the older town residents who wish to remain in their homes as they age. If we don't currently provide a service, we will try and connect you to that service. Call 311 or 869-6311 to get more information or receive services.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Welcome to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. This is Project Independence and You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Lohse.
Good morning, John.
Hello, Otto. Nice to see you again this week.
You too.
And we really have a wonderful, wonderful segment coming up. We have with us Eric Alexander, and I'm going to have to read a few things about Eric, but I'm going to do it over the segments because it's just too much for one. But Eric is the director of Vision Long Island, which is a regional smart growth planning organization. The stuff that Eric has been doing during this whole coronavirus is amazing. But specifically, Eric has been a proponent of smart growth planning, both federally, state, city, and county levels. He is literally all over the place, and he's doing a tremendous job. We'll talk about some of the different projects he's done in all through Long Island. I mean, you turn around, literally any revitalization you see, you can almost put Eric's name on it to some degree. But today we're going to talk a good bit also about the coronavirus and what's going on. And I know, Eric, you're a proponent to getting outdoor dining going. I've seen you doing that because we slowly but surely we have to get going. So Eric, thank you so much. I know you're so busy. Thank you for taking the time to join us. And now I'm throwing into your court just to give us some updates on what you're doing and what you're working on.
Sure. No, thank you, John. Great introduction, and Christina and Otto. Great to be here. You have the premier program, really of this type, certainly on Long Island. I imagine beyond. So it's great to be on your show. It's been a while. It was a little over a year ago, right?
In the country and then the world. We have Christina Lou, so it's in the country and then the world.
It's great. It's great to reach out to folks, and North Hempstead does a great job overall too on so many levels. So glad to be with you guys. What we've been doing. We've run an organization that supported Main Street revitalization for 20 years. So we've been part of a lot of grand openings, and visionlongisland.org is our website, and you can see us on Facebook and all that. But last year we formed the Main Street Alliance, really to connect the 40 downtowns that are doing revitalization efforts. And who's doing them? It's local municipalities approving these things, chambers, local civics, local developers, small businesses. So we're trying to connect those people. And little did we know that it was important to have this alliance because in the case of this coronavirus, all those grand openings can become grand closings, and that's what we're trying to stop, by any means necessary. So, what have we been doing? We've been trying to get people hooked up with PPP loans. I'm sure you've done stories on that. The small business associations, PPP loans, which they just changed the regulations on, by the way. So they're much more favorable. So for folks who have small businesses, there's still money left. There's $100 billion still in the program. So folks should apply. We're doing a webinar on that later today. So helping people get resources, number one, promoting the businesses that are open. So we're promoting a lot of takeout businesses in different downtowns, but then also promoting the outdoor dining, as you mentioned, so that folks can reopen in some form. I think everyone signed up for flattening the curve for 30 days, maybe 60 days. We're kind of heading into 90 days. And there's this feeling that is the sinking feeling of a lot of small businesses. We surveyed 600 of them early on, and we found that a third of them are considering not reopening. They can't do this anymore.
The other day I saw, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So we're jump in.
The other day I saw in the paper, New Best, which is a hair salon in Manhasset, will be reopening. I don't know when exactly. They had 34 haircut stations. They reduced it to 12, and they literally removed the chairs. And then they had 24 hair dye sections. That's down to 10. and they literally remove the chairs and have like screening around it. So right there, you have a man that's going to reopen his business down 2/3 already. I mean, you
He's going
can't
to be
increase
working.
prices that much to make up from 34 haircuts an hour to 12 or 13, whatever. I don't remember the exact number. But bottom line, it's a drastic reduction. And he said, as opposed to having empty chairs next to each other, he thought it looked more aesthetically pleasing to remove them and redecorate the places, which is what he did.
Yeah, people are restructuring their businesses, sadly, to deal with this coronavirus, no doubt. And it is important. But at the same time, people, are going to be working, and they're already working now. They're working double the amount of time they worked or 50% more, whatever, to get 60% of their income,
Right.
at best. And, that's the fear factor here, is that how long can people do these sorts of things? The people that can, restructure and find a way to reopen. It's just, this has really hurt the small businesses. It's hurt the little guy. Walmart's parking lot, I counted last weekend, was 500 cars. There's got to be 600-700 people in place. So the rules were rigged to allow the bigger stores to be open, but the smaller shops can't function. And we're still now. I guess tomorrow we'll finally allow retailers, to have some people in their stores.
Right.
Retailers.
Oh no, and I'm agreeing with you there 100%. And I think it was Jim Cramer from one of these money talk shows said this past 2 or 3 months has been the biggest transfer of wealth in history, and people aren't paying attention because the stock market has boomed. Whether it stays up here or not is another story. That's not our discussion today. But you're right. The Walmarts of the world are continuing to grow, but mom and pop little blouse store or pants store is not opened. So these people are hurting, and these people have rent to pay, and they have families to feed. And there's no way about it. It's a terrible situation for them. And that's 42 or 41 million people unemployed. And even the last week's unemployment number that went up dramatically, 40 some odd % of that was part-time workers, which really doesn't help somebody if they're going back 2 days a week versus 5.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we surveyed the Main Street business owners, they told us of those third that was going to close, they told us 3 things. They said, one, if we get government aid quickly, maybe we can stay in this game. And some got it, some didn't, some are still pending. So that's a question mark.
Okay.
The second was if the lockdown and shutdown ended in some reasonable time. Now, remember, we surveyed this about 30, 40 days ago. So it still hasn't ended for many businesses. So strike 2, kind of. The third one is, if the community would rally around them. And I will say, to the credit of Long Islanders, they love their Main Street businesses. They do support the little guys, the little smaller shops. And wherever they could, they got the gift cards, they did the takeout, they've been helping with services online. I've seen a real, there's been a big shop local movement, which you guys in North Hempstead are really strong behind.
Right.
That has helped buoy the local stores. But it still doesn't change the fact that some of these big stores have really been, by design, by the rules, essential versus non-essential, have really, structured by New York State ESD, have rigged it against these guys. We're trying to make those changes. I mean, we've asked the state senators to dive in, and others. Monica Martinez, to her credit, jumped in. We've reached out to the governor's office. The problem is I think they write these rules and then they don't want to change them. Even though midway through you may say, you know what, you have to. You should let's look at the information here. From a public health perspective, 500, 600 people in a Walmart doesn't make sense versus 2 people in a jewelry store or a clothing store or whatever. You should disperse the shoppers.
Oh no, I'm agreeing with you there. And unfortunately, once a bill seems to go through, it can be reversed, but it doesn't get reversed easily.
It takes time.
And by the time it gets reversed,
yeah,
everything will be fine. It'll be February of next year, and we'll all be shopping anyway. Otto, did you want to say something?
Well, bottom line is how I like to say that I got my master's degree in business because I had a small business at one time that went down the drain. So I can relate and really empathize with how difficult it is to run a small business. It's not peaches and cream. It's tough, even in the best of times. And I guess one of the questions I have for you, Eric, is what would you suggest? Like there are a lot of programs out there to try to help a small business financially and in other ways, what's the best track to go on? You know, the more I read about it, the more confusing it gets. So, you know, what would be the best way for a small business owner to try to get on the right track financially?
Well, I mean, the first step, I tell everybody this: sign up for those SBA PPP loans. The loan very simply can become a grant. It's an easy application. They changed the regulations now. It used to be you had to spend the money in 8 weeks on your staff, but now they let you do. And the argument would be, well, I'm not back in business, so I don't have staff to pay, or you're on unemployment, or I have them at a skeleton crew or whatever. So how am I going to spend this money? And it's not going to work. The point is now you have 24 weeks. So you have time to spend that money down and make sure it's a grant so you don't owe significant funds when this is over. So number one, get the PPP loan for sure. If you don't, for whatever reason, want to take the PPP loan, New York State has what they call the New York Forward loan. It's primarily good for minority and minority small business and women-owned small businesses too. So that's another loan program that just opened up. I'd avail yourselves to any number of promotional campaigns that are done through a lot of local newspapers and a lot of efforts. Even we're diving into one with our Pink Tie friends to help promote small businesses through this time. So get your promotions in order. There's a gift card programs out there. Get your loyal customers to invest in you during this period for future services. If you can't open this second, or if you're opening, so keep engaging. Don't hunker down and stop communicating. Even simple things. In Port Jeff, the mayor is doing video chats with restaurant owners that people love, and they just love seeing the owner of this restaurant and that restaurant, and they're like, "Oh, I'm looking forward to coming back and seeing you." Keep that connection going, like you do on this radio show. You keep connections with your listeners and customers. You got to do that. You can get depressed. You can, and for real reasons, real reasons. But stay connected to the people who got you there, because they will help you through this period. But definitely apply for that PPP loan.
The gift card thing is very important because it does show support to the local guy. And you may not use it this week. You may not use it till September, October, but it's good. And you'll use it then when the time comes. But in the interim, you bought a $100 card. You're helping him out. And worst case scenario, you could almost look at it as a charitable donation, because God forbid he goes out of business. You're lucky you're not out of business and you had the $100 to give him. But in the interim, he's going to be so much more appreciative when you go in for dinner. He's going to remember you helped him. And that's what a local business is about. And that's what a local community should be about, helping each other out. And if you call that person for a fundraiser you're doing, they're going to send something over when their life gets back to normal. They're going to remember you and say, John bought a gift card and helped us out. And so did Eric. And so did, Otto and everybody else. We got to help these guys out.
I mean, no disrespect to the big companies, and there's a role for them. There's a role for Walmart and Target and all that. But do you see them supporting your Little League, your PTA, your Kiwanis, your Rotary, anything in any community, any charity that's worth its salt? The food pantries locally, and some of them, and they may give to larger organizations that filter down, but they really don't have a presence on Main Street. So should all your money go to those stores? Same thing with the banks. There are some banks that didn't process PPP loans. Maybe if it didn't process your PPP loan, there are other banks now that do. They'll take anybody. So that's an important thing to know. Someone will say, "Oh, well, my bank said they're not doing it, so I can't get it." Total misnomer. Jovia Bank, Cabbage on website called Cabbage, and PayPal all process PPP loans. So no matter what your bank tells you, you can get a PPP loan. Very important. And also, you might want to say,
you know what, Eric, hold that thought. We have to take a break. You're listening to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We're right back with Eric Alexander.
Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead. One of the many services we offer is transportation for food, shopping, and medical visits. Call 311 or 869-6311 to get more information or receive services.
Welcome back to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. This is Project Independence in You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Lohse.
No more phone calls.
No more phone calls. He's going to be a good boy for the rest of the show.
Right.
And we are with Eric Alexander this morning. And Eric Alexander has been Businessman of the Year by the Nassau Council of Chambers of Commerce, not just by one, but by the full Nassau County. And he's also been listed as one of Long Island's 100 most influential leaders. And it's so easy to understand because I know Eric and I've seen him at events and I follow him, what he's doing, and he's really tremendous. But Otto brought up a wonderful point at the break. Eric, tell us about Vision Long Island and a little bit more. I mean, you've been there for, I believe, 12 years or 10 years
20.
as director. 20 years as director.
20.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
No. It's like a 3-month gig. I was like, this ended up 20 years. 20. Actually, technically, almost 22 years. So yeah, no, look, Vision Long Island, we're a downtown planning organization. We use the term smart growth to talk about building in our downtown areas and preserving open space outside of our downtown areas. Main focus is really getting the downtown areas activated. So if that's art, music, culture, good public parks, good, strong small businesses, downtown promotions, all these sorts of things. Affordable housing is a key component, walkable streets, so folks it's safe to walk. So those are some of the principles we get behind. What we do education. We speak to civics and chambers and local mayors, any local group. We get on programs like this and talk about downtowns, the importance of downtown. So we do that. We have an email newsletter, goes out to 25,000 people, usually every Friday, but through this coronavirus every day. We do 2 big events a year. We do a big summit, about 1,200 people that come out, community leaders across the island. And then we do an awards program where we honor some of the best projects. And then we lobby Albany and Washington to get our fair share of infrastructure dollars for the region, because we don't always get our fair share of those, sewer, transportation, economic development. And then lastly, we actually get involved in downtown planning, where we're hired as planning consultants to physically plan a Main Street area. So we've done, Farmingdale, Huntington, Bay Shore, Westbury, now working in Baldwin, Hicksville, we've been working on a long time. Helped a little bit up in Great Neck Plaza with Mayor Jean on her code. So we do lots of fee-for-service planning with Valley Stream, Kings Park, centralized slip Lindenhurst. We've been around. So it's been a journey.
Were you, am I confused? You were involved with the space?
The space in Westbury, the mayor took care of that. I mean, we helped them on the marketing plan associated with it.
Okay.
Yeah. It takes, look, it's great to get accolades, and thank you for the things you're saying. It's all a partnership. Everything we do, we need a good chamber. We need good elected officials. We need civics that aren't just don't just say no to everything. Right. They actually care and care to engage in planning. You need people who put their money into these stores, and developers that are willing to invest in the buildings. It's a partnership across the board, and you need the customers. You need people who want to come to a Main Street. And I think we've done a good job before this coronavirus. Let me be real clear. We had a Main Street Alliance meeting in January where we had 20 different Main Streets present all their plans for the year. And it was like this exhilarating meeting. Everyone's like, we're going to do great. This is going to be the best year ever. And this thing hits.
No, I agree. You made a good point that Westbury has a good mayor, because you could go in and do the best job in the world. But if the elected officials in that community don't follow up on it, it's going to fall apart in 5 years. It's going to, no matter what effort you put in. So the partnership with your knowledge of the planning and their desire to make it work and to see it through for their constituents is the marriage you need for success. Otto, I see a hand up.
Yeah, I live in New Hyde Park, which Western Nassau, and I know the village worked at trying to make a downtown area, but it seems to me that there are certain places that, short of knocking the place down. You can't have a main street on Jericho Turnpike or Hillside Avenue or Hempstead Turnpike. Do you visualize anything in those types of areas where somebody eventually may come up with what might be considered a downtown, like a Plandome Road or,
I believe that those types of areas can and should be downtown areas. Plandome Road should definitely function as a downtown. New Hyde Park, I know when Trustee Don, he did a great job in really advocating for some medians and some crosswalks and some landscaping and such, and more could have been done, but the Department of Transportation kind of wouldn't let them. I think you need to tame the traffic a little bit. You need to calm the traffic. You need to get those speeds down, particularly off peak. During peak, it'll be congested. But the key is, through downtown and Huntington Station, in Huntington Village, State Road goes through it. Smithtown, State Road goes through it. Sayville, State Road goes through it. These places have major traffic volumes moving through their downtown area, and they still function as a downtown. So similarly, you have downtowns in North Hempstead all over that do and should function. But some of that has to do with how you design the street, how close the buildings come to the roadway, and how you set up the traffic patterns. But it's all doable. It's just engineering. I mean, engineers can tell you. We do a complete street summit every year. We're doing one. It's upcoming on the 25th and 26th. Two video days now. We got to do a virtual, where we have the engineers come in and explain how you can remake main streets or some of these roads to be more pedestrian friendly and bike friendly and Main Street friendly.
Well, in New Hyde Park, there was a Donald Barbieri.
Oh, yes.
Good man. He's actually been on this show a few times as an example of somebody contending with a disability in a very positive way. And he was a good man, but I
really
know
good man.
He tried hard to get things done, and it wasn't easy.
He got DOT to invest in that roadway. To his credit, we gave him a Smart Growth Award for that. I remember we did a walking audit with AARP down there many years ago. There's really great local leadership there. And the trustees in New Hyde Park now are trying to come up with some solutions to make a main street, whether it be by the train station, which people seem to oppose that concept, but there seems to be more openness in looking at Jericho Turnpike. And, I hope they get their plan together, and, we're trying to help them a little bit, but I think they're struggling with how tall a building should be. Some of these things aren't easy to sort out, should we have 3-story buildings? Some people want 5-story buildings. The developers want that. And it's sometimes too much for neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's funny how, which I've never really paid attention to, like the last 6 months or 8 months, how the flow of traffic is so important to a downtown. Not only parking, parking's important, but we've passed parking because unfortunately you just can't create, parking when the buildings are already up, etc. But it's just the flow of traffic and the aesthetics around it, that you want to feel comfortable driving through a community.
Right. We want to be comfortable walking through a community too. I think the parking and walking concept and biking concept, that's why we do walking audits, because you see the community differently from the perspective of a pedestrian. We bring wheelchairs and we'll put people in wheelchairs, or if we have actual people who need wheelchairs or in wheelchairs, we get them around. We use walkers and canes, and it's good to have young people walking too, because they have a different set of eyes on these, and folks biking and skateboarding, other things. There's a lot of different users. There's a lot more people, particularly now if there's a pandemic. There are more people walking and biking than ever. Right. So how do we, and then we got people though, because the traffic's down, so people are speeding. So this is like an accident waiting to happen. Some accidents have happened, and I think it's a question of how do we remake these spaces, and it's very doable. There are some newer guard, and I don't mean in age, I mean thinking, transportation engineers that are very open to the walking and biking experience. In fact, there's a new chapter in the Green Book, which is the engineer's guide to traffic engineering. There's a whole new chapter in the AASHTO Green Book that speaks to how to create walkable and bikeable streets. Whereas years ago, we had to fight, we had to have our engineers fight with the association to say, well, it's not in the book, so you can't do it. And I was
Right.
So you finally had to create a chapter to make it happen. So now it's there. And so, there's an openness to it. There's lots of funding. There's 40 traffic calming projects on Long Island and more coming, that have been advanced.
There was no Visions Long Island when Long Island was first developed or evolved. It was kind of piecemeal all the way, I think. And now we try to undo what was done.
Well, what's fascinating is if you go back to the old file maps before Levittown and Robin Moses, before William Levitt and Robin Moses, and look, to their credit, they did certain things that were needed, as far as, creating affordable housing and single family homes and park systems. I don't want to demean these guys, but historic figures. I mean, who am I? But before their vision hit Long Island, if you look at the old file maps, we have walkable streets. You got good street grids. You had sidewalks. You had affordable housing downtown. You had 3- and 4-story buildings pretty much everywhere. You look at some of these old historic buildings, and they're right to the street. They're in the right place, right to the sidewalk. There's kind of a sense of enclosure. Every neighborhood had either a town hall or a church in its center with a park, and not every neighborhood, but most settled neighborhoods settled in a way that was humane and connected to social gatherings. The Levitt and Robert Moses experience brought us to the automobile that took us out of town and into a much more, we drive everywhere to everything, and that's the spirit of things, And I think now we're starting to get back to a balance where, and it's perfect because half of Long Islanders want the downtown experience and half don't. And I tell the ones who don't, I'm like, bless you, I'll leave you alone. We'll never be in Melville. We'll never go to Comac. Don't worry. Like our organization will never show up in places where folks don't want to see some kind of gathering or some sense of place or some sense of downtowns. So our vision is what the community's vision is, So, but for many years, the folks that wanted that sense of place, that connectivity, weren't able to have it. It wasn't legal. Until recently, until we've been all advocates together on this.
No, it's important. And the most important thing is those neighborhoods that want it, now you're there.
Yep.
So if a neighborhood wanted it 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they didn't know how to go about it. And then everybody made a stink, and then it was easier to stop.
Right.
Why fight the crowd?
Right.
Now they see what's going on, and a mayor could come to you and say, can we work together? You have any ideas? Maybe they won't go over, which is fine. As you said, you're not going to Melville. You're not going to Comac. That's 100% fine. But maybe in 10 years, you'll be going to Comac. You have no idea. And if that's the case, you'll be there. But actually, before we go to Comac, we have to take a break. You're listening to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We'll be right back.
Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead. One of the many services we offer is help at home with minor home maintenance. Call 311 or 869-6311 to get more information or receive services.
Welcome back to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. This is Project Independence in You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Lohse.
Good morning.
We are very fortunate to have with us Eric Alexander, who is the director of Vision Long Island and really is so involved in recreating the face of Long Island in those areas where they're looking for a facelift. Right. Okay. And we said that in the last segment. Eric and his organization are not going in to fight with a mayor, to fight with a supervisor. He's there to answer their call for help and to work side by side. And Otto at the break had a wonderful question, so I'm just going to actually turn it over to Otto to talk with Eric.
Well, I would say all of us would agree. I mean, we live on Long Island, that Long Island is not an inexpensive place to live. As a result of that, there are young people, I have them in my own family, who have left Long Island because of things like that. And the current situation with COVID is not going to help that at all, I don't think. Because why? Because local governments are going to need money. they're spending money now that they probably don't have in order to get through this whole thing. And I believe a lot of budgeting is going to be tough in the future. And I'm just curious as to what the thoughts are as to, other than time. I don't have a solution, which I normally like to do if I'm going to say something negative, but the facts are that this is a tough one. And how will we, as a vision of Long Island, get through this whole spell where money is going to be an issue? And how does it, what's your thoughts on how we get through this?
So look, I've gotten in a lot of trouble sometimes by not emphasizing the health aspect of this coronavirus crisis as much as the economic impact. And some people are like, well, you're being insensitive. I'm like, well, no one's paying attention to the economic side of this. And it's devastating. It's not just devastating for small businesses, it's devastating for working or not working people across the board right now. Some people have trivialized this and said, well, we'll go to 4-day work weeks. It's better for the environment or whatever. I'm like, no, do you realize people are going to be doing 7-day work weeks to get out from under the mess that has happened here in their personal economics or their business or what have you? There's a lot of people who didn't get unemployment. There's a lot of people that, they're just waiting to get it. They'll get it. But, the process has been brutal. The food lines on Long Island have gone from 3 times the need to 7, 8, as much as 10 times the need. Then in the past, we've done 25 food drops, just kind of with our partners at the Pink Time Network. And so we see it, we hear it, we feel it, and we're working class people. Our staff is ourselves, So the reality, and I'm blessed to have a job. I am, and many don't. So I'll start with that. Having said all that, our local economics are going to be buoyed by the exodus of people from New York City. We're hearing about a 10% increase in demand from city people that are coming in and backfilling homes, apartments, and eventually vacant stores. I hate to say that. I don't want to see Long Islanders lose their opportunity and then city folks come in, but it's happening. That is very real. That will put money in the coffers for local government and keep services going. Will it solve our structural affordability problem on Long Island? No. And that's where we still need production of affordable housing. We still need subsidy programs from the state in order to create affordable housing. We need creative use of zoning codes to allow smaller apartments within single-family homes, so people can live. Seniors, we've had this conversation on the show, about having senior apartments, in a lot of these senior accessory apartments, so you have some housing stock for folks of all ages, backgrounds, incomes. So we have to do that, and of course in a non-discriminatory way, because we have a problem with that on Long Island. So there's a lot of work to be done. The equity problem, not just from a racial perspective, but from an economic perspective, is going to be on the forefront. And all this with, revenue that hasn't kicked up again because we're not open. So we got to open to get the machinery going, and those city people will come here and we'll kind of get back to some kind of norm. But we got to do it.
You made a good point in reference to Long Islanders, say, moving off or closing their stores or whatever, and people from Manhattan who historically, and I might be wrong, have more money. And those businesses are have better reserves, etc. So to come out and expand some sort of a restaurant or a jewelry store or a clothing store, and a year and a half or 2 years from now, when everything is back to basically normal, there's a vaccine, etc., the Long Islander is gone. The house that was $1 million is now 1.4. And our housing situation hasn't improved for those less fortunate. That is, the biggest thing. I mean, I see it all over the place. Even when some of these beautiful apartments go up, like in Garden City, and there is affordable housing in them. Affordable housing is not affordable. It might be from a ratio perspective, right, for what is expensive in those buildings, and therefore it's only a third of the price. But if you're paying $9,000 for a 3-bedroom and you're paying $3,000 for a 1, that's $3,000 for a teacher.
Well, that's a bit of an outlier.
World.
Most of the affordable units go from 1,200 to 2,200. Is the range, and 2,200 is high. The Garden City was a very unique market, and also
Okay,
it wasn't subsidized. That's the other issue.
It wasn't
just done. No, it wasn't. So usually when you see a high price point, it's not subsidized. If it's higher than 1,500, it wasn't subsidized at all.
I didn't know that. That's why I was curious about the Garden City.
Yeah, it's basically they're using the workforce housing guidelines to meet the quote affordable criteria in the law, but because they're not using public funds, they can set the price higher. So that's how they make up for it. Part of this has to do with
that's
the cost
IDA,
of building.
right?
Say it again.
Eric, that's IDA then. If they're going for IDA.
Well, the IDA is a little different. The IDA is more tied to the jobs and less tied to affordable housing. There's no statutory requirement related to affordable housing. They have to meet jobs and economic development standards. And they meet them because not just on the construction side and the management side, but also the multiplier effect of the people living there then fuels the local small businesses in a community.
Okay.
So that's why we usually support IDA. I know that's controversial in some sectors.
How does it work? Like one of the areas that really surprised me was over on in New Hyde Park, near New Hyde Park Road and the LIE, Ritz-Carlton. I'm not picking on the company, but built this area with apartments from $1 million to $3 million, and I often wondered, how did that come about? I mean, it's probably one of the last big pieces of property in Nassau County that could have been developed with more people in mind, if you will. How does that come about?
That's the Village of North Hills, right?
Pardon me?
Yes.
The Village of North Hills?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of that is the people in that village didn't have a broader perspective beyond their village borders in the planning of it. I think ARCSAR did work with the village. They were the developer on the project. Again, there's some types of development projects that are outliers to us. They're not normative. I look at Sayville, they want to put 1,800 units on a golf course, and it's, 3,000 a month apartments or whatever it is, and they say it's all good for us. That's not, there may be people who need to live there or want to live there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's addressing the needs of of our workforce or affordable housing needs or what have you. I prefer to talk about and focus on the deals that are, the projects that are doing that. We've seen more of them. In the last 7 years, there've been 100 projects that have been approved. 90 of them had more public support than opposition. And I think all told, of the 15,000 units of transit-oriented development we've gotten approved, close to 3,000 of them are affordable. So, it's not as many as we need, but it's more than would have happened if we didn't work on this. A lot of it has to do with subsidy. I was talking before about the cost of construction, between material cost, labor cost, site cost, and the project cost of moving through the approval process. If you just do the numbers, it's tough to tie out. The banks demand certain returns, unless there are builders that have purely their own capital. They're boxed in by their financing. It's
a business too. It's real.
You can't get the price points lower. Trust me, I've looked at more pro formas and spreadsheets trying to, can you shave here? Can you shave there? And then the answer is get some subsidy, and we just don't have enough on the subsidy side,
And that's the only place where the benefit's going to come from is subsidy.
Yeah,
Labor has to get theirs, and raw materials are getting. You're not going to turn around and buy lumber at half the price now. It's impossible. And you're not going to have the guys come and work, a union worker, for half the price. They could donate a little something, but you're not going for half. So it has to be subsidies. There's no other option in my mind at this point.
There are 5 developers on Long Island that work with these subsidies.
Okay.
And they're as close to not-for-profit developers as you can find. I have not met a true not-for-profit developer, no matter what, folks want returns, but they are certainly much more amenable to building these types of projects. And Dave Gallo has done in one in North Hempstead is one example, and there are others, across Long Island. Certainly Conifer, DNF Development. So there's definitely folks out there that are doing this concern for independent living.
It's looking down the road, unfortunately, large companies like JCPenney, whatever, there's going to be, as far as visions of Long Island go, there's going to be some empty spaces over there. And I understand it's business. People are in business to make money. That's why they're in business. But I often wonder what, like that whole area where Fortunoff's was has really been kind of idle for a long time. And I unfortunately see more places that are going to be idle as a result of what's going on right now. And there's no magic potion, if you will, that says, oh, you must now do this with this, and we're going to knock that whole thing down and build a new community for people. But how would you get involved with things like that? I mean, it's not a downtown, but it's a mall, if you will, that may be not functioning anymore.
Well, it's interesting you raise that, because in North Hempstead you got the Brookfield proposed development in Manhasset, the old current functioning Macy's. And I think that our organization is getting involved with some of these things, but only where the community wants us involved. And I think it's, there's a bit of a debate whether you should have new town centers or just support existing town centers. So, not everyone's of one mind on that one.
Well, I lived in Manhasset.
Hold on, Otto. Let's keep it going. We're going to have to take a break first. You're listening to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We'll be right back.
Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead. Some of the many services we offer include nursing and social work services. Call 311 or 869-6311 to get more information or receive services.
Welcome back to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. This is Project Independence in You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Lohse.
Tough napping day today, John.
Oh, you can't nap today because Eric Alexander is with us and he is just too good. And at the break, we were talking about subsidies but one thing that did pop up, and I know it's conversation that people have, is the multiple, not layers of government, but all the different governments on Long Island. I mean, North Hempstead, and then we have Glen Cove, and then you have Hempstead, and all throughout Long Island there's mayors and supervisors, but it works. Okay, and in some places there's more difficulty. In North Hempstead, I mean, I am, always singing her praise. Supervisor Bosworth, she's fiscally responsible, she's pleasant, she's reachable. You name the consummate, government official, it's Judy. You have a disagreement, she'll reach out to you, she'll talk with you. You're not always going to get what you want because she can't give it to you, but she'll work with you. But then there's other localities, whatever it is, that, they changing constantly, and then you can't change the rules so dramatic. You can't go from black to white with every election. There has to be a little bit of fluidity between one guy and the next, or one woman and the next. And that does hurt some of these localities, as you were saying, Eric. And we're not talking about spaces, but then that hurts affordable housing, because all of a sudden you're putting a brake on something that was decided by my administration, so to speak. Right. And then yours comes in and you want something totally different, and you stop the job in the middle. It just hurts everybody.
We've seen the political, flipping hurt projects, definitely. Sometimes it just delays them. Sometimes it stopped them completely. But in most cases, local governments do a great job of planning their communities and certainly listening to the public. Sometimes they, projects get hung up too long. Sometimes there are various forms of bureaucracy through their building departments that take time out of a project that's hurtful. Sometimes it's not really on the local level. You get Nassau County Fire Marshal or the Suffolk County Health Department that can delay projects months, or the New York State DEC or the New York State Department of Transportation. So there's other levels of government that are much higher that can delay projects for a long time. But as far as consensus on the local government, we're a home rule state. Long Islanders like to plan their communities, and certainly in North Hempstead, you got 30 some odd villages. I think you really do want to plan your communities. Now, it's worth noting that there is a proposal to remove local zoning that has gone to the governor's group of 100. And it's a combination of, the people pushing for this historically. Currently now it's this one group of builders, one more extreme group of builders, not everybody. The Long Island Builders Institute and the builders associated with our organization are against it. Then there's a group out of the city that's pushed to get rid of local zoning, the RPA people. Newsday's editorial board has been opposed to local zoning. It wants to see it controlled by a smaller group of people. Some members of Newsday's editorial board. So, there's a lot of interests that are conforming to get rid of Long Island zoning. And there could be other areas around the state. Create economic recovery zones that the state would control, like Belmont.
Okay.
There's a push for that. The good news is we've gotten 50 elected officials across Long Island against it, local chambers against it, local civics against it. So far, we haven't heard from our county execs and in the 6 Democratic senators in the majority. They have not weighed in. We've asked them to weigh in. They haven't yet. But most everybody that we know thinks that's just an awful idea to have the state control local zoning. So we say keep it local.
The importance, and that's a question now. Actually, Senator Anna Kaplan's coming on in a couple of weeks. And actually, Joe Galante was on last week, I think, or the week before, representing Tom DiNapoli. But how important is it for the senators to speak up before, in your mind?
I think they have to. And here's why. You could wake up one day, 11 o'clock, we see the governor every day, he decides stuff. He's the governor of New York State. He's elected. Bless him. We have a legislature, which represents our different communities.
Right.
And if they're silent or don't communicate what local people's needs are out here, there's a real question, what are they doing vis-a-vis different issues? Why cede all your power to the executive branch if the legislative branch isn't going to represent people? We can't expect the governor's staff. I'm constantly talking to the governor's staff. They do a great job. But we can't expect them to deal with every single issue and poll every little thing. That's what we have legislators for, So they should speak up. If Anna Kaplan, we've spoken to her office, we hope we get a quote from her. We believe she'll come down on the right side of this issue, but they should be vocal. And just because something's not in the news doesn't mean it's not happening. There's one thing I've learned doing this 30 years, 20 years with Vision, is that things happen behind the scenes all the time. And you wonder, you scratch your head, you're like, how did that happen? And it's because people were working on it behind the scenes, and one day it becomes a thing.
Right.
So,
now, I'm not involved from the government side of it. I'm involved from the political side of it. But It's amazing how all of a sudden you don't think anything's happening, and then you read about it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that was just like a rumor 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And now it's moving forward. And then, as you said before, even with the bill, but prior to a bill, once it starts getting steam, if it's going in the wrong direction, it's hard to get it to stop because it's building momentum.
It's funny. I'm told on the zoning issue, Eric, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. And when important people tell me not to worry about something, I worry.
No, it's the truth because you got to see it all the time. I want to shift gears because we're running out of time. And I saw something in which I had no idea was going on with the Nassau Bar Association and COVID. And they have a hotline for help.
Yeah.
Again, this is things that people don't hear about.
Yeah. There's a hotline for free legal services through the Nassau Bar Association, Suffolk Bar Association, New York State Bar Association. Lawyers are stepping up. The good news is through this crisis is real people are helping others, and if it's attorneys, I know accountants are helping do free tax services. There's all kinds of resources that are out there. There's a lot of I mentioned some grant programs. There's promotional programs. Local papers are doing half off, on ads and some free ads. You're getting a lot of people doing food deliveries through Sandy, through coronavirus here, I'm with this Pink Tie group. We've done 25 of these pantry drops, and with some check
What's
donations.
it called again?
A Pink Tie.
Okay.
Pink
I
Tie.
see you with your pink gloves, but I didn't get the name of the organization.
Yeah, pinktie.org. And what you can do, let me give you a plug on this.
Give it.
You can, if you just want to call up and say, I want to donate, leave a bag in front of your stoop and punch in the internet and say, we have these chauffeurs, the late night chauffeurs that come and pick up that bag of food, and we'll get it to the next pantry drop. So it's a way for folks to participate in a food drive without leaving the house. Contact.
Do you have a phone number by any chance? Because some seniors.
Pinktie.org.
Pinktie.org.
Sorry. You can call my number.
POD, right? You're saying
631-884-9128. You can text me and I'll route you to the right place.
That's great because, you hear different organizations that can tell you to drop off, but a senior doesn't necessarily want to put on a mask and get in the car and drive someplace.
Right.
And they put it on their stoop, a couple of canned goods or whatever it is. Go ahead, Otto.
Well, no, just a statement. I think that the legal business is going to have a field day when this is all over. My opinion. I think there's going to be a lot of problems legally when this dust settles, if you will. I can just visualize it going on for years. So that one end of the industry, the legal market, I believe, will be making some money. That's.
No, I agree with you there. Unfortunately, it's the truth.
Yeah.
And another issue and I don't know when, I was in the city yesterday, and Starbucks was in one corner, and Starbucks, you can't even buy a coffee there without the app, and they bring it to the door. This particular Starbucks, I was on 68th Street and 2nd. You need the app, and they have all these green squares on the street, and you stand one behind the other. I don't have an app, so I didn't have coffee. But literally right across the street, there was a pizzeria with 3 people at the counter eating the pizza, and nobody had a mask on. Now, of course, you can't have a mask on when you're eating the pizza. I understand that. But they didn't even have them move to the side, so to speak. And you see people in New York walking around without masks. And I know that was another thing that the governor said, you don't have to go into a store. I believe the governor has said that, right? You don't have to be served in a store, or especially like a clothing store or someplace, or a liquor store, where it's not required that you taste or eat the thing. I don't know what the rules are outside of that, but it doesn't make any sense.
Well, John, Trump is going to do big rallies, and then there are protests going around Long Island that not everyone's wearing masks. There is a reality of people being people, and then there's a reality of us all trying to socially distance and be appropriate and follow rules. And, because this is unprecedented in my lifetime, to be, almost 90 days now, shut in. And I think people they just want to be out. They just want to be out. I'm in Riverhead right now, and I'm about to join a press conference about picking up the pace on moving, some of the phases forward, to allow museums to open, they're ticketed and planned, or some types of concerts where you can seat people at different spaces, So, I think people want to be people. They want to get back to normal because they want to be human. You want to be safe, but you want to be human. You want to give someone a hug. It's crazy.
That's another whole point.
It's crazy.
The hugging part is that's pathetic right now, but it's the truth. You walk up to somebody, it's like, I have she's going to be 5. My 5-year-old granddaughter opens her arms and says, "Grandpa, virtual hug." That's what I was like, oh, what a world are we living in? Virtual hug. Because her mother won't let her near me. No, stay away from him.
I'm with my 10-year-old, and she wants to see her grandma, and she saw her but couldn't do the same thing, couldn't hug.
Right.
And it's just it's maddening,
That's hard because you're with her, but from Otto?
Well, yeah, I have 2 grandsons who I have 10 grandchildren altogether, but I have 2 in particular that live in Pennsylvania who normally I would see at least every couple of weeks or whatever. And I hadn't seen them since March 16th, actually, since it all started.
Yeah.
But they're coming down on Friday, and we'll be staying here. Sooner or later you got to bite the bullet here, and do it with caution.
Right.
but you have to live too. And
Yeah, like if you're in quarantine and they're in quarantine, I'm a believer. Like, I see my kids from a distance on the weekend, but if we're all in quarantine, we sit at the table. Why can't you have a meal versus this, like using a microphone to talk?
well, this is the worst in my lifetime, and I have a few miles on all of you. There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, I know.
In my lifetime.
We'll get out of it, though. We're going to get out of it.
Yeah, no, that's it. And we have people like Eric that are going to be guiding us. And
Oh, no, we're together. I'm not guiding. We're locking arms, guys.
Good for you. Listen, we are done. Eric, I want to thank you so much. This was a wonderful, wonderful interview. I know how busy your schedule is, and all I can do is thank you for giving us the time. You've been listening to Senior Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org, and we've been listening to Eric Alexander, who's the director of Vision Long Island. Thank you again.
Like what you hear? Here's how you can let us know. Give us a call at 516-299-2626 or email us at info@wcwp.org. Like us at facebook.com/mywcwp and leave a comment or tweet us at mywcwp. We welcome all kinds of feedback. To directly support the podcast you just enjoyed, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to give back, visit wcwp.org and click the support tab. Thanks for listening from your friends at WCWP.